Hey everyone, welcome back. I'm Michael and we're going to be getting right back into some more Reddit stories. If you enjoy the video, make sure to leave a like and subscribe. Now, without further ado, let's begin. This story was created in the Am I the Asshole subreddit a couple of weeks ago by a throwaway account. The post is titled AITAH for sending a recording of my ex asking to open our relationship to her parents. I am 26, broke up with my girlfriend of 4 years, Mary, F27, about a month ago because she asked me to open our relationship. It is, was, and always will be a major line in the sand for me, something that I have opened up to her about in the past. We've had a great relationship, and the only thing that stands out, and the only reason it stands out now is because of this situation, is that she progressively started making a lot more jokes about some of our shared friends over the last few months. Some involved her being with them and others were about threesomes, etc. I won't lie, I played along a little, but I consistently made some joking response along the lines of, "You're more than enough for me," and or "I don't like sharing." I never took any of it seriously, because why would I? Until she asked and I found out, I realized that she was probably trying to gauge my response and see how open I was. Mary asked when we were getting ready for bed about a month ago, kind of bluntly. I was scrolling on my phone and she was getting changed and goes, "If I asked you to open the relationship, would you?" This might sound super corny, but it was like I had an out-of-body experience, and all of the above hit me at once. All the jokes and comments so far made sense in a she's trying to butter me up to the idea kind of way, and I went really numb for a second. To her credit, she must have seen how freaked out I was and asked if I was okay. I pretended I didn't hear her and asked her to repeat herself, and she was really hesitant to, kept saying she didn't say anything, and only repeated it when I insisted. Then I went to voice notes, set it to record, and put my phone down to talk to her. I don't remember much of it, just that I tried to stay calm and keep her talking, but the note is just over an hour and a half long, and it feels like I'm listening into a conversation that happened between two strangers. She trickle-truthed all the way through it and ultimately stuck to the idea that she hadn't been cheating, she didn't have any one person in mind, but had been fantasizing about mutual friends and people at work, and seemed to get the idea that they'd be open to something if she asked. A lot of it is her being defensive and me trying to needle information out of her without it escalating into an argument. A lot of me placating her and trying to make her feel comfortable enough to keep talking. The apartment is mine, and I suggested we take a break a few nights later, so she went to stay with a friend for the weekend. By the next Monday, I'd spoken to some of my friends and my sisters separately, and come to the conclusion that we were done and suggested she start looking for somewhere else to stay. She was upset but didn't really argue and had the vast majority of her stuff out and at her parents' house by the end of the week. So coming to 2 days ago, her mom reached out over WhatsApp to say she was disappointed in how I'd handled everything. The message wasn't really framed in a way that she was reprimanding me, more that she wished we could have worked it out. She then added me to a group chat with her husband, ex's stepdad, and they both kind of tag teamed me saying that we could work it out, I was making a mistake, and that I shouldn't overthink things. I eventually got it out of them that my ex had fed them a very vague story that we had broken up because she'd wanted to take the next step in our relationship, and that I'd freaked out, we'd argued, and she'd been effectively kicked out. Her stepdad was leaning on the fact that he thought I was more mature than this, and her mom just kept repeating how disappointing this whole situation was. So I was pissed. In the heat of the moment, I told them I had the recording of our conversation that I could send that would explain what she actually meant about taking the next step. I initially tried to email it to them, but it was being a balosh, so I eventually shared it via Drive. In the meantime, I took a few screenshots of my ex and my messages, ones where she had made jokes and comments about sex with our friends and a lady from her office, and sent them along to that shared chat group. I haven't heard back since, again it's been 2 days, and I don't feel as vindicated anymore. A good few of my ex's comments were about other women, and I'm freaking out because I don't know how, if at all open, she's been about her sexuality with them. I also think I shouldn't have engaged at all, and I shouldn't have felt the need to prove my innocence to either of them. I've checked in with friends and over social media, and it doesn't look like there has been any fallout. Also, my ex blocked me a week ago before I spoke to her parents, so I can't really contact her without going in person, and at this point, is it too late to even give her a heads up or check in? Edit TW for SA, to address a few points I have seen in multiple comments. We don't live in the US, and we have no laws on recording private conversations on the books. I am not proud of doing it, but it wasn't illegal. Mary and I had several mature, calm conversations about what we both wanted out of this relationship. Mary wasn't sure if she wanted to stay and kind of admitted to self-sabotaging by asking about opening the relationship. Mary and I have been friends since we were 11. Her mom was my coach when I swam competitively, and our friend group and families are very close and intermingled. So she was wary about what would happen if we went on a break or fully broke up. I was not trying to punish her for being open to polyamory. TW below, Mary and I are both bi, and when I was in my last year of high school, I was involved in an inappropriate relationship with a teaching assistant. He was arrested and registered as a offender, but during the time we were involved, he convinced me to be with other people as well. He effectively pimped me out for a year and physically assaulted me when I eventually said no and tried to cut him off. Mary knew all of the above as she helped me through it at the time, and I was very clear that I couldn't do something like that again. I know that what I went through wasn't an actual open relationship, but it was very much framed as one, and that has stuck with me. I would never put down other people for doing it, but I made this all very clear to Mary and the other serious relationship I was in before her. I've carried a lot of issues from then into future relationships, and I am in therapy and have worked with Mary to not punish her for what other people have done to me. But as great and supportive as Mary was, she did have an issue with trying to gaslight me. She would say one thing and then, typically during an argument, would vehemently argue otherwise and genuinely make me question myself. It took her coming to therapy with me and me sometimes showing her texts for her to realize this was a problem, and we had been working on it together. Me recording her was still not right, but it wasn't an attempt to gather something incriminating. It was just a response. It was a poor response that I shouldn't have done, but it wasn't malicious, nor did I intend to send it to anyone at the time. Also, since making this post and reading your replies, I have gone back to her parents to apologize. I did initially try to tell them that she wasn't being honest and that I wanted to keep things private, but they kept going on about me being immature and that this was disappointing. I'll be honest, I got a bit angry again rereading some of their messages, but it really didn't warrant me outing Mary the way I did. I appreciate everyone's judgment. User Key Hovercraft 2637 said, "It sucks, but they really piled on. I would have just said she wanted an open relationship and then, if they didn't believe you, offered the evidence. But I totally get being accused of something you didn't do with the additional pile on. I would have sent it. Just block all of them and find someone who loves you or enjoys being single for a while." Sorry, I know it hurts right now. User ML1190 said, "NTA. Leave her to clean up her own mess. No one forced her to lie about the reason for the breakup. I hate people like this. Why do people who mess up their relationships always feel the need to make up a reason for the breakup that blames the innocent partner? How hard is it to just say you grew apart or want different things if you're not willing to tell the truth? You owe her nothing." User Outside Practice 658 said, "It's very weird to me that you recorded the conversation to begin with and weird that you felt the need to tell her parents. You don't need to justify why you ended the relationship, but it's strange to share intimate sexual information with her parents without her knowledge or consent. She's not the asshole for asking you for an open relationship either. What you described sounds like she had a need in the relationship and tried to raise it with you in a way that honored her needs and was considerate of your feelings. You were dishonest about your needs and tried to get her to keep talking, which sounds like a setup. You should both leave each other alone." User Molasses Inevitable 53 said, "Why would you record that? Let alone want to send it to her parents. That is such bizarre behavior. When her parents contacted you with the version that she wanted to take the next step, you should have told them that either they misunderstood what she was hinting at or that she misinformed them. You tell people, especially her parents, that the reason you broke up is personal and private between you and your ex. If you want to confide in a discreet friend, fine, but you don't discuss this sort of thing with your ex's parents. Have some dignity. If you tell the parents, YTA. In fact, YTA for recording the conversation." 2 days later, OP provided an update. "I want to preface this with a genuine thank you. I came to this sub because my mind was all over the place yesterday, and you all helped me clear it up a little, even those who clearly weren't trying to be helpful. As a result, upon reflection, I'm not sorry for recording her. I understand that people don't like the idea of being recorded by an intimate partner, especially during an intimate conversation, and you naturally support Mary on that front out of solidarity, but all I can say is you do not know what Mary is like or what our relationship was like either. A little before she came to therapy with me and the incident that pushed me to try and get her to come with me, Mary texted me to pick her up a Smarties McFlurry on the way home from work. When I brought it home and gave it to her, she told me she asked for a Dairy Milk one they don't even make here anymore, and rolled her eyes at me for not listening to her again. Trying to show her what she had sent led to a 15-minute shouting match, which resulted in her throwing her ice cream at the wall and shattering my phone screen. That's one incident of many. She once told me I was flirting for holding the door open for a group because there were girls you were clearly trying to impress with them, and went on such a long tirade about how my male chivalry was just a selfish way to gain attention from women beyond her. I'm not apologizing anymore for recording her. I wouldn't have had such a visceral need to defend myself if I wasn't with someone who kept hurting me. I made that recording because I knew she would lie, and she did. But I thought she would lie to me, not to other people, and I wanted it strictly, so I had her words there on my phone should she start claiming she said anything else. At the end of the day though, we didn't end up having any of that, and we parted maturely. I understand that a lot of you won't believe that was my intention, and I'll just have to live with that. Beyond all that, I am still sorry for sending it to her parents as a way to get back at her. Her parents have always been very pro-LGBTQ, so although it wasn't right to out her, I was massively overthinking them harming her or kicking her out. At most, exposing her interest in polyamory would have embarrassed her, but nothing I shared would have put her in any danger. That being said, I saw red during that exchange and saw this as a way to finally show people I wasn't misremembering things. It was spiteful and vindictive, and I can see so many different ways I could have dealt with the situation more calmly, but I was angry and I didn't do any of them, and for that, I am still sorry. Like I said in the edit to my previous post, I apologized to her parents. I apologized for getting angry, cussing them out, and for sharing private information about their daughter with them. I fully acknowledged that I was being spiteful and that it was a harsh escalation of a response. Anne and Paul, what I'll call them for this post, accepted it at face value, but asked if I could come over for lunch this afternoon so we could have an actual conversation. It was nice, but really awkward too. Mary wasn't there. I apologized again, and Paul and Anne said they were sorry for interfering and not giving me a chance to tell my side. We both agreed we'd acted inappropriately and that, going forward, we wouldn't involve ourselves in this topic. We left things on relatively better terms, but I'm not going to talk to them for a while. Above everything, they are Mary's parents, and they will always be in her corner, as parents should be. So keeping my distance is in everyone's best interests. As for Mary, she unblocked me late last night and let loose a tirade of angry messages. They mostly, of course, consisted of how creepy and disgusting I was for recording her. Again, I recorded her because I knew she'd lie, and all she did was prove my point, to which, despite still cussing me out, she had no real response. I got from her, Anne, and Paul that things are understandably awkward after what I'd shared, but she's still staying with them for the time being. They've not discussed it with her beyond letting her know they'd heard the recording and now knew she'd lied, but there has been no indication of negative consequences, and that's it. I'm reeling from 4 years of a relationship being over, of my girlfriend and best friend using my own trauma as a way to make me break up with her and then pretending everything was okay just to lie about me behind my back. But what is hurting me more is how I only now understand from reading replies to my post and talking to my friends that I was with yet another abuser, and I am nowhere near as strong or as over what happened to me as I thought. Thanks for your help. User Foxy Sly Old Stody Fox said, a gaslighting ex-girlfriend. Memories. You're right, not all women are like this, but it hurts when you sink several years of your life into someone who is. User Polygon Man said, I mean, the very fact that you knew she would start lying and recorded her to protect yourself from gaslighting shows that it was an abusive relationship. Emotional manipulation, including gaslighting, is a form of abuse. Also, throwing things against walls, breaking your phone, and all that other stuff. You've been abused for years. She wasn't your best friend, she was your abuser. What you need is to get away from her and her family completely. To completely separate for a nice long chunk of time so you can gain some perspective. Because the fact that you were with her for 4 years means that you have some things to work out. No one, literally not one human being on the planet, should accept being with someone like her. Additionally, in the comments OP said this. In addition to my post, I want to make something crystal clear. The people still going through the comments claiming that Mary asking for an open relationship is some indicator of modern women, or her, being inherently promiscuous, or using it to push some narrative were weird and annoying. In addition, the people who deliberately skewed the order of events and or try to patronizingly psychoanalyze me to try and frame me as worse than I actually am were especially unhelpful. I understand that what I did struck a nerve with a lot of people, and I wholeheartedly recognize that I did not do what a lot of people would have preferred in that situation, but I came to this sub for advice and judgment. So please judge me for what I did, not what you think I did. User Surround Miserable 262 said NTA, I think if there have been indications where you have been told one thing and then gaslighted into being in the wrong and not listening, then you are understandably going to be wary. That's a form of abuse. Then pointing out that the item supposedly requested doesn't exist anymore and that you have physical evidence you gave what she requested, and her screaming at you and smashing your phone is again abusive. People in abusive relationships are actively told to record incidents so they have evidence of what was actually said. Because he said, she said is very difficult to prove as evidence of abuse. Also, repeatedly being gaslighted by someone and told that's not what was said grates on you, wears you down, and can mess with you psychologically. Having a recording or record of what was said can help stop the gaslighting because you can see the lies and disprove them. I don't think you are the jerk for recording the conversation. Now, your ex's parents forced themselves into the situation and were having a go at you for listening to her side of the story. They shouldn't have involved themselves. However, you corrected them. I think it was wrong to send them the recording in the first instance. I would have gone along the lines of saying, what she said is incorrect. This is my version of events. If they called you out for lying, you then would have been within your rights to send the recording and say, well, you listen to the conversation and decide whose version you want to believe. At the end of the day, this wasn't a healthy relationship. It's over now. You need to block the ex. You need to not see her parents anymore, and you need time to process and heal. This next story was posted in the same subreddit by a user named Artistic Minute 4365. The post is titled AITAH for losing it and calling my father a weak, pathetic man in front of his family. My father has always been against any confrontation or arguments. He is extremely passive, refuses to stand up for himself, and avoids any conflict. If someone isn't paying attention while walking and bumps into him, he insists it's his own fault. If his employer messes up his salary, he won't bother fixing it. If a mechanic doesn't properly repair his car, he just accepts it as is. This, unfortunately, resulted in a tumultuous childhood with my insanely narcissistic mother. She controlled his every move. She got him to quit his job and be a stay-at-home dad. She had him do every chore, insulted him at every step, cheated on him relentlessly, and even brought her affair partners into our home. She enjoyed making his life miserable every day, and he never questioned it. My extended family, God bless them, were there for me as much as they could be. They tried for years to make my father leave, but he never budged. When she directed her anger at me in the form of screaming, insulting, or general demeaning, my father never once found the guts to stand up for me or support me. When I was a kid, if I cried to dad about something mom did or said to me, he would sweep it under the rug or just insist I forget about it. He would even try to justify it. As I grew older, it really set in for me how messed up this was. My mother gladly kicked me out of the house when I was 18, and my father just sat there and looked sullen. Didn't say a damn thing. I joined the Air Force almost immediately and got stationed on the other side of the country. The dynamic was awful, and I could have easily gone down the incel route if not for therapy and the amazing people I met along the way. It took years for me to get into a better mental space. I was filled with hatred. My mother left my father 2 years after I got stationed and utterly destroyed him in the divorce. She was killed a year later in a DUI with one of her affair partners. I took a lot of joy in hearing that it took her hours to die, and that's when I really knew I needed help to process things. I'm almost 30 now, have a girlfriend who is perhaps the best thing to ever happen in my life, and fully understands the situation with my family. I have learned not to allow myself to be consumed with anger and resentment by my past, or so I thought, you'll see, and instead put that energy into my future. I have been extraordinarily low contact / near no contact with my father since I left. As much as I try, I cannot make that connection with him. I recently went to a family reunion and brought my girlfriend with me. My father was there as it was his side of the family. They have many issues with him, but he is family, so whatever, I guess. I made sure to avoid him. I was chatting with my uncles when I heard my father talk in the background. He was discussing how a coworker of his was going through a divorce after discovering his wife was having an affair and was positioned to have a very favorable divorce on his side. My father remarked how his coworker should work instead to forgive his wife and, by his own words, set a good example for unity and forgiveness, and how he believed he set a great example for me in that respect. I swear it was like a switch went off in my head, and I was mentally back to being the rage-filled 18-year-old. All these years, and he never learned a damn thing. I turned to him and asked if he was serious. He looked at me and started to stutter. I know the next minute was pure word vomit, and I can't relay it perfectly, but to sum it up, I shouted how he was a pathetic father, a pathetic man. His family all know he's a disgrace of a human being who would rather his son be treated like shit than defend him because he's a coward. No one would ever see him as an example to live by. His wife would rather half the neighborhood than even touch him, and he should never ever believe anyone respects him. I began to derail and ramble between my shouting, and my girlfriend quickly took me out and drove me home. It was insane just how quickly being away from him made me feel better. She just held me when we got back and told me it's okay. Again, best thing to ever happen to me. I was ashamed of how I lost it, and am now going to resume my therapy. That's a given. However, I'm glad I finally unloaded what always needed to be said onto him. Extended family is pretty mixed with reactions. His brothers/my uncles said it was time for him to hear it from me. My grandparents are pissed I did that in front of the entire extended family, with some saying I should have done that behind closed doors instead of in front of everyone. User Mesmerizing Taylor said, "It sounds like you finally got to express the pent-up feelings you've carried for so long. While the outburst wasn't ideal, it seems like it was a necessary step towards healing. It's good you're resuming therapy to process this further." Under this comment, OP said, "Yeah, afterward it hit me that although it was very cathartic, it definitely wasn't the most appropriate way to handle it." User Kingdo7 said, "So the family isn't mixed about the fact that you trash talk your father, but that you should have done it privately. Damn, he truly isn't respected at all. Tell the family that wanted to do it privately that you got triggered by what he said and just snap. You can't really control when you snap." User Lena Wang 101 said NTA. "We all have our breaking points, and sometimes years of unaddressed pain come out in less than ideal circumstances. What you've described isn't just a mishandling of a situation, it's the culmination of a childhood filled with neglect and hurt. Your father's inaction and rationalization of abuse made him complicit. It's unfortunate that this had to happen at a family gathering, but your emotions are valid and don't always emerge according to plan. I hope this moment can be a catalyst for you to find further healing and for your father to finally understand the gravity of his failings. Your next steps in therapy are crucial. Continue to work through your pain without shame. You're reclaiming your voice and your right to emotional safety." User Apprehensive Fox 3187 said NTA. "Behind closed doors, you didn't even want to talk to him in any way to begin with. You got triggered after he blatantly lied about how good his marriage was when he knew what she did was not only abnormal but abusive. He allowed his child, you OP, to be abused for years and be kicked out while he sat there and did nothing. And he had the nerve to suggest his co-worker do the same thing he did and continue the same horrible cycle in the co-worker's family. So no, your family who are mad need to realize they should stop enabling him, especially if he's trying to get other people to do the same thing he did, which could traumatize more people, especially children. So no, I do not think you're the asshole, and honestly, from the way he behaves and said that it was something that needed to be said." A couple of days later, OP provided an update. "Thanks for the advice and recommendations, even among some of the YTA comments. However, some of them needed to be addressed because they were either hilarious or cringeworthy. Some of them were very angry, and they kind of confused me at first until I saw their comments further down or checked their profiles and saw rants about double standards or complete non sequitur ramblings about women. So yeah, not helpful advice, but they were great dark reflections about how I could have turned out if not for the support in my life. Some attempted to portray my dad as a humble, kind, caring, sensitive old man whom I'm just being a big bully to. This was a very good insight into how enablers of abuse get away with so much in today's world because so many people forget how they are part of the abuse themselves. Some were attempting to mentally dissect me or have a gotcha moment with me to pull apart my story. That was generally asinine, and I had to step away from those before they asked for my cranial measurements or something. So it was pretty much immediately when I was up the next morning that I realized I needed to resolve the events of last night. I first spoke to my girlfriend and gave a sincere apology for having her see me like that. She reassured me that nothing was wrong, she'd known me for years and has always known me to be level-headed and understands why I kind of snapped. She herself has a history of dealing with narcissistic families, so she absolutely understands the dynamic. She only really told me that it would be best to work on spending time around my extended family since my father will always be there. I told her not to worry, I'm immediately going to talk to them afterward to figure that out. So that part's fine. I looked like kind of an ass in front of her, but I'm making sure that doesn't happen again. I also informed her of my intentions to resume more therapy just to keep myself steady, which she was happy to hear. I called my grandparents and sincerely apologized as well for putting such a sore dent into their family reunion. I acknowledged that it wasn't appropriate, and while I still feel it felt good to say that to him, it should have been done privately and not in front of everyone. I also told them that going forward, as much as I love spending time with them, since the family always hangs out in one group that my father will always be in, for now, until I can handle being around him, I need to distance myself occasionally until I feel comfortable interacting. I told them that I am not, nor would I ever be, establishing an ultimatum or demands of them, and that either way I need to step back. I guess during my apology and explanation, I was kind of just going on a tangent because my grandfather interrupted me to calm down. He told me that after I left, people kind of separated or slowly started leaving, and they eventually were able to talk to my father one-on-one. I guess seeing me have such a freakout resulted in my grandmother having a mini freakout of her own when she started talking to my father, resulting in her kicking him out. While I have a great relationship with both, my grandmother has always been extra protective of me, so seeing me that way must have set off a fire in her. My grandfather then said that it has become a bit of an open family secret about my father's failings. His brothers taunt him about it and generally don't have a great relationship with him, and for my grandparents it's always just uneasy. But seeing me the other day and how it still affects me so much has really clicked in for a lot of people that it was really bad. They began to try and say sorry if they didn't do enough, which I very adamantly retorted that they did more than what anyone could have expected. It was very emotional for a minute, but culminated in them telling me that they have decided to distance themselves from my father for the time being and have given him the ultimatum that unless he has a deep introspection and regularly goes to therapy, that distance may become permanent. My extended family, I've been told, are going to try and reach out or call or whatever, but I asked them if they could relay to them that it's not necessary and that I'm fine and am sorry to them as well for ruining the day, which again, they told me I shouldn't apologize for being hurt. Since then, extended family have sent some messages with the general consensus that it's okay, with some older members complaining about my lack of respect towards my father. And finally, I texted my father hoping to meet at a local coffee shop and have a final talk. I met him and he didn't look good. I think his parents tearing into him finally got the message through. I had so many things I could have said, but I instead asked him first thing if the coworker he gave the advice to took it well. He just said that neither he nor several coworkers interact with him anymore. I asked him if he truly 100% believes that every single thing he did for me as a child was for my benefit. He didn't really say anything. I then finally asked if he has any regrets for how I was treated as a child and if he thinks he ever did anything wrong. He looked utterly defeated and just mumbled that he could have done more. I could have poked and prodded and could have gone on another rant, but instead I told him this should be goodbye and I hope he gets the help he needs. I think finally unloading my frustrations was what I needed to finally be able to move on and find peace. I absolutely need to keep on track with therapy and admit that a public outburst isn't okay, but I should be fine. User, I want to be an anemone said, "Congratulations sincerely on owning your actions. No matter how justified, you acknowledged your outburst was uncomfortable for others and likely not appropriate in that setting. It takes incredible strength of character to admit your failings, even if you have no idea how else you could have reacted in that moment. That you immediately communicated that to your loved ones is a huge sign of how respectable and genuine you are as a person. I really hope you keep moving forward from this situation with the same mindset. Good luck." User GullibleCoconut70 said, "You're still the jerk because you did exactly what the person you hate would do, but now it's all going to be swept under the rug, and the person who probably suffered the most is going to be closed out by the family that was already joking behind his back. Now, those same people get to get on their high horse and look down on him like they haven't been bystanders too. You took away the last bit of dignity in front of everyone. Who'll be there for him? How does he even change when he has no one now? You are justified for feeling the way you do. It seems you kick someone so far down in life that there's no way to get back up." Under this comment, user Blazy Wolf said, "I disagree with this. Someone dealing with trauma isn't perfect. Sometimes things are too real, and in complex situations, you aren't, or shouldn't be, expected to be perfect. I agree that blowing up in public wasn't the best thing, and OP recognizes that, but you also can't have a perfectionist view on how a person will react when confronting the immense weight of their worst burdens. His father has been an abused man, and this is a fantastic example of how the cycle of abuse continues. If I had to guess, he was likely abused long before he met his wife. If I had to guess, he was likely ground down into a pitiable man since birth. His family dynamic seems off, where they'd rather look down at him and mock him rather than care about his circumstances or how broken down he's been. It's reasonable to feel bad for the father too, and recognize the need to check oneself. OP recognized the importance of maintaining oneself even in the face of such burdens, so I'm sure OP understands the dangerous slope of allowing one's traumas to make decisions for them. Taking responsibility and making it a priority to address oneself is also the healthy and responsible thing to do. Another comment made in this thread said, "I'm glad I'm not the only one who sees it that way. OP's a victim, but his dad is one too. I hope he's okay. He seems passive in nature, and he was probably that way before the marriage. I wouldn't be surprised if he were abused for years before seeing how easy it was for his entire family to toss him to the side, talk bad about him behind his back, and clearly not care that he was in an abusive relationship for years. It seems like his trauma response was simply to surrender. Then he was forced into that trauma response for most of his life, so he tried to make it better in his mind.